Good evening all and welcome to the Huddy Hui live on Huddy Sports episode 13. We've had some exciting games of rugby over the last few weeks, and round 6 of the Swindale Shield is this weekend, and there are some massive clashes on this weekend, and we're going to talk about two of those important clashes today. Joining us from the Horowhenua Library in Levin is Adam Julian. Adam, how are you been and what are you doing up in Levin?
Just spending some time escaping the realms and whims of the city. I had a fantastic day yesterday at Evans Bay Park in the traditional between St Pat's Town and St Pat's Silverstream. Silverstream winning that game with a contentious penalty try, which will be discussed for many years. Stories to be shared at the Marist St Pat's reunion this weekend as well. They turn 50 on Saturday, and our young guest is an integral part of their club this year.
Exactly right, Adam. And yesterday's game at Evans Bay Park between St Pat's Town and St Pat's Silverstream was an absolute cracker of a game of which St Pat's Town should have walked away with the match. However, that is rugby. You can be the dominant team and still lose. And speaking about Marist St Pat's, it is their 50th anniversary this year. A lot of their celebrations have been put back to 2021. But this weekend is an important weekend for the club. They are launching their 50th anniversary book called Come On Red, written by Tim Donahue, and the title Come On Red comes from the legendary supporter Tim Gordon, who used to greet the guests at the door when people came to the club rooms after the match. And our guest tonight is Marist St Pat's lock and captain Tom Martin. Tom, thank you for coming on the Huddy Hui tonight. Tell us about what's important about this game against OBU this weekend. It's celebrating the 50th anniversary, the launch of the book, but also how was it that you were chosen as captain of the Premier side?
Oh, great to be here, first of all. I think this weekend's significant for sure. Obviously, 50 years of a traditional, proud club that really thrives on big wins and supporting, community, families, supporters. So I think this weekend's just going to highlight the strength in numbers from everywhere we pull. But another significant factor, obviously, bouncing back from a tricky season last year where we didn't pull through as well as we wanted to. I think this year's a bit of a statement, and that bouncing back as we do is one of our key traits. Going back to the start of the season, obviously pre-season was underway and in summer there, we were ready to kick off as per the usual dates. And I think talking to Coach Zach Fernardi and the other coaches, Edward Meechin, we really wanted, a leadership group that led by example on the field and made good decisions across the park. And it's a collective effort for sure. I think we've struck a good balance this year between players that want to play and players that, want to think. And that's kind of been the key rolling through the rounds of the early season, striking that balance. And, I'm honoured to be captain this year. The boys made my job very easy. And I think we've got a great balance, a great squad, and I'm really looking forward to this weekend. We've all been waiting out for it since day dot. So, can't wait to get out there in Evans Bay in front of all the fans and supporters. Yeah.
Last year, the team was relegated to the HOBM Cup, but you had a very strong finish. How do you reconcile the poor beginning with the strong finish and the present form of the 2020 side?
Yeah, I think it's probably a message for all young players. We had the team. It just was mentally, attitude-wise, at the beginning of the season, for whatever reason. It goes to show that it does happen if you get complacent and think things are going to happen. So by turning it around at the end of last season, we really want to finish strong. And going into this season, we didn't make that same mistake twice. Yeah.
Now, your upbringing is a Marist upbringing, but it's in Hamilton. So share with us your upbringing in Hamilton and tell us about your dad who played for Waikato.
Sure. So Yeah, I played 6 years of junior rugby in Hamilton. So in Hamilton, they have a junior structure where you go right from 5 years old up to 13 years old before you go into your high school team. So I played right through to 13th grade, where I was lucky enough to actually be part of the under-13 NZ Marist little squad there. We went into Timaru for a little trip, which was quite fun. I'm always bumping into old faces from that trip. Yeah, but I loved my junior years. Dad, Paul Martin, he coached us in the under-13 grade team at Marist. He also played Premier Rugby at Hamilton Marist, followed through to Waikato Rugby in the front row there. 2 seasons with the Chiefs, also a season with Otago before heading over to France to play at St. Claude in the south of France. So I think, yeah, that's one big factor for me coming down to Wellington. I really wanted to stay a part of the Marist family, which was an easy decision for me. Yeah.
How does Marist Wellington contrast with Marist Hamilton?
I think very similar in a way in that it's community first. It's about the supporters. It's everyone plays for the supporters. Obviously a strong tie between St. Pat's Town and St. Pat's Marist, Marist St. Pat's. So I think that relationship is also very similar to the one in Hamilton between St. John's College and Hamilton Marist. And I think that's special. And that's one thing about rugby. We see today a lot of players dropping off after secondary school rugby. So I think that relationship between a high school, secondary school, and a club is very important. Yeah.
So, Tom, you were educated at Hamilton Boys High School, and of course, Hamilton Boys High School has one of the best rugby programs in secondary school rugby. Tell us about your time at Hamilton Boys, education and rugby, but also you were also captain of the first 15 there too.
Yeah, sure. So I started off in year 9 at Hamilton Boys. Went right through the rugby system. So they have a rugby academy. So right from year 9, if you're lucky enough to be selected, you go into a rugby academy, which actually becomes a subject, part of your timetable. And from that day, you kind of get exposed to a professional environment. And that's the key, is that they're driving that professional element of sport and just teaching you the ropes of how things really are. As well as that, they're very big on balance between that and your education. So I went through my first year in 2016, the first 15, where I actually was lucky enough to go for an European tour to the UK and Ireland and Wales. So that was a pretty awesome way to kick off, playing with the likes of Quinta Paya, Ramaka Poihipi, players of that calibre at such a young age. It was such a good way to learn. We trained, 8 times a week. It was very, very intense, the structure of how they work the program. So you're up at 5:30, 6 in the morning, 3 days a week, and training every day after school. I went through into year 12, where obviously studies and that started to ramp up, which was tricky for me, but it was all about keeping that balance. I didn't really have much time for much else, but we got through it. And then in my final year, I was lucky enough to be head boy as well. So it was another, cog in the machine that had to keep kind of balancing out. But I made it work. Obviously, lucky enough to captain the last year. And it was such a good way to finish, I feel. High school years, I think it really set me out well, heading into academies and, the real world, as they say. But probably you'll put it down to the credit of the people I had around me. A first 15 led by 2 deputy principals, Nigel Hotham and Greg Kirkham, are just outstanding at ensuring that boys not only get the best rugby, but the best schooling and the best life skills heading into the big world. So yeah.
What is it about Nigel Hotham and Greg Kirkham more specifically that makes them so effective? They've been at the helm of that program since 2003 and fashioned a formidable record, and that's a long time without change.
It is. So for me, both of them come from a teaching background, which I feel helps an immense amount in terms of relating to students and understanding what we're actually going through school, teacher relationships, behavioural, management, that kind of thing is just all part of the puzzle to get the boys on the field and playing the best footy. But obviously they've stuck to their guns as well. They're teaching what works. They're also adapting along the way. Obviously the game's changing every year. And they've got the support around them, guys like Mr. Graham, touch background, it's great with the back line. And then you've got younger coaches like Logan Asplin, who's bringing a bit of spark in the full pack as well throughout over the last few years. I think it's important to kind of keep up with the times, but they've done really well as well. Yeah.
Hamilton's playing at a very high level of first 15 rugby. What are your standout match memories from your time at school?
Ooh. I have to say the Super 8 win against Napier 2018 against MSP teammate Tyrone Thompson, where we won kind of in the last minute there. Luini, our Fijian winger, got a runaway try from the 80-metre mark, which was a pretty cool highlight of my years there. And obviously that European tour as well, getting exposure to travel and how other countries play was pretty special. But yeah, managed to get to top 4 3 times and failed to pull through with the win. But even making it there 3 times was big for me and was a huge highlight, yeah.
There were consecutive 1-point losses.
They were. Thanks for bringing it up again. Yeah, no. Yeah.
So, Tom, you are down in Wellington studying at Victoria University. Tell us about your degree. What are you studying? But also, you're part of an academy set up, but not in Wellington.
Yeah, so I was lucky enough to get the opportunity from Waikato Rugby to follow my passion outside of rugby, which is design. Obviously, in Hamilton, there wasn't the kind of facilities that could support my study, and
They keep knocking down the architecture there.
Yeah, it's just I'm not. No, but obviously Wellington is a city, is an attractive place to study design. And Victoria University, the facilities they have. So I made my way down with the help of Andrew Strawbridge, who really supported me in my endeavours for study down here, but also be able to play some rep footy for my home, really. So I came down. I'm studying industrial design, minoring in media, which is pretty much like product design. The world these days is definitely heading in that route around 3D printing, laser cutting, some pretty cool ways that the world's heading in terms of the products. So that really attracted me to come down and rip into it, which has been pretty special. Rubbing shoulders with some pretty big designers here at Victoria University, as well as training, obviously remotely from Waikato, getting sent programs, nutritional updates, and keeping in touch that way. So yeah, no, I'm really enjoying it. It's a big challenge. It's been a big challenge. Obviously, a few different changes, but I think I've always been the kind of guy to kind of chase challenge, and I think it's been pretty cool. Yeah, for sure.
A minor and media, you've met two of the greats right here, Tom. Now, tell me about your leadership situation a little bit more. In 2019, the Waikato under-19 team assembled. You were the captain of that side, and before one of your games, you had a huge personal setback, and I'm wondering what you learned from dealing with a young man who unfortunately was overcome with depression and took his life. What does that teach a young guy in a position like you?
Oh, I just think it highlights the importance of talking. I think there's a lot of young people nowadays who kind of prefer to keep quiet and hold back. They think might be the best way to handle a certain situation, but after learning obviously about last year and events surrounding that, the importance of checking in. I think checking in is just something small that, especially in the rugby scope, we can do. But there's a lot of support out there now. I think the support systems that people have in place, the communities, and that now is there to be used, and that's important. Not to shy away. Yeah, that's one big thing for me from that tragic event last year. Yeah.
And Brad's gone temporarily missing there. On the subject of difficulties, the Chiefs this year are struggling. We're quite delighted about that in Wellington. But what would you say to the Chiefs if you were in a leadership position there? 6 losses in a row and Sunday's defeat against the Highlanders from a very winnable position.
Yeah, I think I can relate it kind of to last year in a way, at Marist St. Pat's. And there's still games left. Winning the title or not, I think it's important to finish off, whether it's the game or a season, to finish how you want to finish. It's all on to them now. It's they can control what they do, but yeah, getting that first part right, mentally and attitude wise, is definitely the key. Yeah.
Todd, Marist St. Pat's, tell us about the culture there and some of the important people involved with the club.
Sure. Yeah, great family culture. Good to see, heaps of supporters on the sideline every week. And there's always events running at the club, which is great. Ken Akoi does a great job, bringing everyone together. Zach Fionardi's been huge at the club over the recent years in terms of the boys also supporting other teams on Saturdays and getting them around, getting amongst women's rugby, supporting and just putting on the best rugby that we can, I think, is key. But yeah, obviously our club rooms are a bit further away from the ground, but we still get great numbers up there, and it's pretty cool to see. Young kids running around. We've got young ball boys, families, quite a few families within the team as well, a few dads, which is pretty special as well. So it adds another kind of layer to why we play. Yeah.
Yeah, Old Boys University this Saturday for the Jack Lamason Trophy. Of course, last year you played them in the HOBM Cup final and got the W over them. And of course, the battle between those two clubs has been tightly fought over the last few years. What's the preparation going into this Saturday's game? And also, you'll be going up against Tame Plumtree this weekend. Yeah,
so obviously, big week. We started well on Tuesday. Kind of flushing Saturday always game aside. We just take it week by week basis. But obviously we're prepared and for a structured, well-oiled OBU side. And we're really looking forward to the challenge. Yeah, Tane, good mate of mine. We're through the rep rugby scene, and we're looking forward to rubbing shoulders with him on Saturday.
Fantastic.
It's possible that you two could have been playing the New Zealand under-20s together, Tom. Great shame that tournament didn't go ahead, but how does he contrast and compare to your game, and what are the specific things that Marist and Pats need to do to stop a 9-year losing streak in the Jack Lamason Trophy to MSP?
Yeah, I think obviously touching on 20s, it's a bit of a shame, but it was early on in the program where it got announced. I think like anything, you just got to move on and just focus on what you can do. It'll probably be the only year in history that didn't go ahead, but hey, these things happen. But in terms of OBU, we've done a lot of work around specific areas of the game which we feel are going to be makers or breakers. Obviously, a big set piece team. We've worked well to get that right this week. because that's the basis of everything in rugby, especially for this weekend. And I think our boys have been defending well each week, so it's going to be important that nothing changes in that kind of sector. But it's just going to come down to who wants it more, I think, on Saturday. Technical, tactical aside, yeah.
Well, Tom, thank you very much for coming on the Huddy Hui today, and all the best for Saturday. I'll be down there in my St. Pat's Old Boys president capacity, and also probably calling the game on Huddy Sports. But you go have a fantastic game on Saturday and go well.
Appreciate it. It's been a pleasure.
All right, thank you, Tom.
Thank you. See you later.
Well, Adam, Tom Martin, young man, 20 years of age, a wise head, on very tall shoulders, but a very promising rugby career, and a great honour to be captain of Marist St. Pat's, one of the largest clubs in Wellington.
And he would be one of the youngest captains in Marist St. Pat's history. Joe Walding Karatiana was appointed when he was 22, outstanding hooker from Hastings Boys High School, now in the Hawke's Bay program. But Tom's situation is very unique. He's been allowed to play in Wellington despite training for the opposition. And really, that's the hallmark of both his talent and his personality. You can see how genuine he is with his answers around mental depression and study and community. That was the most striking attribute of his personality in that interview, was the emphasis that he places on surrounding himself with good people and getting positive outcomes. A very likeable player and person, Tom Martin.
Exactly right, Adam. And it's round 6 of the Swindale Shield this weekend, and there are some massive games, in particular deciding these fixtures could have vital importance to where teams finish up at the end of the Swindale season. As we know, the second round is just going straight to semi-finals. And so there are the top 4 for the Jubilee and the HOBM Cup, and there are the teams that you're calling this weekend, and then I'm also calling as well, are definitely teams that are on the fringe or in that top 4 of the Jubilee, and a win this weekend would help them. And one of those games in particular we just mentioned with Tom is OBU versus Marist St. Pat's, and that is for the Jack Lamason Trophy, who is a legendary figure in Wellington sport. Before and after World War II, he played senior cricket for Wellington College Old Boys for 20 years and represented Wellington 1937, as well as playing his senior rugby for both St. Pat's Old Boys and Wellington College Old Boys, where he was captain and coach. And he played for Wellington between 1929 and 1936. So a massive trophy on the line there. But for Marist St. Pat's and OBU, these are two teams that are in form. OBU undefeated, Marist St. Pat's with the one loss to Petone, where they lost by 1 point. Massive game.
Absolutely. Old Boys University, the most prolific points and try-scoring team so far this season, but they haven't played a top 5 opponent yet, and that might be telling, although they did decimate Norse in round 2. Jonathan Fuimoano at prop has been very impressive. Seamus Langton, another youngster in the Wellington Rugby Academy, a flanker, really worth watching. His father, Jack, is a former New Zealand heavyweight boxing champion, and Seamus plays with a similar polished violence, shall I say. And in the back division, Dale Sabag is goal-kicking supremely well. And Old Boys University, a team that always like to express themselves. Little Sam Reed's passed 50 games this year and scored 4 tries already. Marist St. Pat's had their most impressive performance of the season last Saturday, Brad. They beat Auries by 42-6. They led 28-6 at half-time. Willie Schultz on the wing scored 2 tries. But the MSP forwards have really improved this season. Tyrone Thompson, who Tom referenced as a damaging hooker, and James Tuia is in blockbuster form. He scored 2 tries on Saturday as well. And if Isaac O'Connor's available for MSP, it's going to be a real scrap at the breakdown, because Old Boys University also have Caleb Delaney, who's trained with the Hurricanes this year. Expect a very tight fixture, one that may open up after the first hour of physical bludgeoning.
Exactly, and on Evans Bay Park, that field is in very good nick, as we saw yesterday, and that will be a cracking game. I'll be calling that game on Huddy Sports this Saturday, so watch out for that from 2:40. But Adam, you're on our fellow radio station this weekend, Tia Puka o Te Ika, and you're calling what is pretty much the game of the round. It's the McBain Shield. Of course, it's played between Huddy Boys, Marist and Petone, and this year it is at the Petone Rec. And Huddy Boys have had 2 losses 2 weeks in a row. And Petone last week beat Paniki, but Petone going in with a bit of a sniff of possibly causing an upset, where Huddy Boys have won this trophy for the last few years.
Well, the McBain Shield in the last 2 decades has become perhaps the iconic hut rugby fixture and one of the best games in Wellington. It's named after Alexander McBain, who was a hut and Wellington rugby stalwart. It started in 1934, and Petone won the first fixture and, in fact, held the trophy for 33 consecutive years between 1952 and 1985. And Hutt was in such a disarray that they often fielded a reserve side to play Petone, who also fielded a reserve side. But when the Hutt and Marist merger happened in 1993, Hutt rugby significantly boosted in strength. And since 1998, Huddy Boys Marist have won the McBain Shield 14 times. They've only won it 19 times in their whole history. So that explains the significant improvement of the Eagles. Hutt have a huge forward pack. Ray and Brett Mania, the size of a block of flats. But they have some injuries in the locking department. Josh Brown, who's typically a number 6 or 8, played lock last weekend, and he's not the tallest or most agile line-out forward. But in the backs, if Huddy Boys Marist can get an even supply of ball, they have the vastly experienced and prolific point-scoring Brandon Lawson to guide them around. Tomasi Alasio from the Samoa Sevens program is back, and depending on the Hurricanes squad for the match against the Crusaders in Christchurch, Salisi Rayasi and Chase Tiatia have made appearances for Hutt this season. Petone, well, they've had a habit in recent seasons of losing close games. The last 54 Swindale Shield games, they've lost 17 by less than 10 points and had 4 draws. But the past fortnight, 20-19 win over MSP and a 28-20 win over Porniki suggests his greatest deal. And one of the hallmarks of the Petone team this season is their depth off the bench. Last Saturday against Porniki, it was an even game for the best part of an hour. And they brought on the likes of Tupu Sopoanga and Dylan Williamson and Josh Houston Tupou, and they added even greater steel to what is a very handy starting lineup. Tom Carter at second, 5'8", scored 4 tries in 5 games. Is emerging as one of the better players in the competition. Logan Henry's a veteran now. And, of course, Josh Souther and Yona Apaneri, the 2 youngsters from Upper Hutt, the leading academy talents in this city. So the McBain Shield will be very tight this year, unlike last year when Hutt ran away with it 46-26.
Yes, and I remember the 2018 edition of the McBain Shield played at Petone Rec, and Petone dominated pretty much the whole game, and then one little slip up at the end, and Huddy Boys Marist bounced back to win right at the end there. But it definitely, last few seasons, the McBain Shield, not only for the Premier side, but the Colts and the Premier Reserve, they get big crowds down there, Adam, and Petone Rec will be humming on Saturday.
It certainly will be. That try that Huddy Boys Marist scored 2 years ago to win the McBain Shield was scored by Anthony Utanga. He's not playing this season for the Eagles, but was right on the right corner by the Welltec touchline there, and it was incredibly dramatic because Huddy Boys Marist were really behind in that game, but they scored 2 tries in the last 5 minutes to burgle victory. The other thing about the Petone rugby setup in recent times is they've had a huge emphasis on involvement from the women's perspective, and we saw a brilliant celebration for Jackie Partiaferetti, Wellington's most capped player and Petone 50-game veteran. She was honoured. The other game we should briefly mention, Brad, we haven't got much time left, but the Sammy Saili Memorial Trophy is at stake this weekend between Tawa and Norse. And Norse are the reigning Jubilee Cup champions, but they actually trailed Johnsonville at half-time last Saturday. Tawa are unbeaten. Tawa lost 3 times to North last year, including that dramatic semi-final by 1 point. Tawa squandering a 17-0 lead. So that's going to be an epic match as well. Tawa's young forward pack has proven remarkably resilient, whereas North have just started to score prolifically. So that's going to be a fantastic game to follow the outcome of as well.
Well, some big games this weekend across the whole round. You can hear Adam on the Etu Whānau Footy Show on Tia Puka o Te Ike Radio on 1161 AM. And you can listen to Mara St. Pat's and OBU on Huddy Sports this Saturday from 2:40. Well, Adam, I know I'm a referee, but I didn't know you were good at interpreting law.
No, I'm here in the Horowhenua Library. It's a wonderful setup here. Obviously, studying rugby books, and I came across this remarkable tome by David Walsh. Now, David Walsh, as you know, is Wellington's most senior referee, and he's very humble about his achievements. And this book is actually very hard to attain in Wellington. So I found it here at the Horowhenua Library. I had to dust the cobwebs off the cover, but it's called David Walsh, A Bone of Fact. And the referees are always complaining at the press about the fact that we don't understand the rules. So I'm going to read this book earnestly, but I want to read a chapter from this book right now because it's such an illuminating read. And so I discovered on page 172 of this massive encyclopedia, Principle 16, which relates to the maul. And I was particularly fascinated by point number 13. And it says, when all players of the team who are not in possession of the ball intentionally leave the maul, they may rejoin, provided that the first player binds on the foremost player of the team and the ball in possession. That is a fascinating insight, one of many in this fantastic book, David Walsh, A Bone of Fact. It's very hard to find, almost rarer than early copies of The Wisdom. But if you get the privilege to read this, read it earnestly or just steal it.
That's right, Adam. I reckon you've got a career as a gospel reader after that segment there. So, but yes, A Bone of Fact, David Walsh, 200 games of Premier Rugby. Well, Adam, that is the Huddy Hui for tonight, and thank you very much for coming on. Enjoy your time in the Horowhenua Library reading David Walsh's Bone of Fact, and you'll be able to hear Adam on Tia Puka o Te Ike this Saturday and myself on Huddy Sports this Saturday. Catch you later, Adam, and ciao now.
Kia ora.